Okay, thanks very much for joining us again. Just to recap, my name is Mike Butcher. I'm a journalist and one of the editors of TechCrunch, based out of London. TechCrunch covers startups, venture capital, big tech, and everything in between. And it's my pleasure to run a panel now on quantum. Now, if you weren't here earlier, we ran a panel on quantum and the technologies behind quantum, which I think was probably one of the best panels I've ever heard, not just because I was running it, but I think it was really fascinating, and I do enjoy, I'm sure you all do as well, getting into the guts of these technologies, because we can talk about business till the cows come home. But now we are going to talk about business till the cows come home. And I think, not to sound like a broken record, but we saw quantum computing emerge over the last few years, and much of it seemed to be coming out of university labs, and now it's getting very, very business. The business potential of it is becoming very, very real. And just to recap, we're going to assume that you didn't hear the earlier panel, but as I said, you'll be hearing different sorts of things now, certainly on the business side. So if you could just raise your hand when I say your name, and so everyone knows you're in the room. So Steve Suarez, Horizon X Consulting, formerly of HSBC Innovation. To my right, William D. Oliver, or Will, shall we say, who's Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And Daniela Herman joins us again from Dynex, doing quantum as a service. And a new addition to our panel is Kapil Diman, who is from, now I nearly said this wrong earlier, but now I know how to say it, so I'm going to say Curanium, as in uranium with a Q. So there you are. Thank you so much for joining us, Kapil. And now we also have joining us Robert Marino from Qubit Pharmaceuticals. And pharmaceuticals, and one of the things that's really very fascinating about, and I learned something earlier, which was this idea that quantum is very relevant in material science and optimization and simulation. So a round of applause for our panel, everybody. Now, this is going to be fairly free-flowing. I don't have a huge agenda because, but I will just give you some. I'll just kick off with some food from thought. Now, I mentioned earlier, but I'll just reiterate that there's been effectively a sort of really interesting war of words going on. I think a lot of it's quite political. As a journalist, I often see statements by CEOs. Not necessarily to be about technologies per se, but rather political positionings. And we saw weirdly, rather negative statements from NVIDIA, from Jensen, from NVIDIA, about quantum a few weeks ago, and all sorts of hell broke loose, and then he turned around and said, well, actually, we love quantum, so we're going to talk about it in March, and then all the stocks sort of recovered. Another thing, really interestingly, was I saw that, where's he gone? Mark Zuckerberg, he's an interesting man, isn't he? He cautioned, this is a technology guy, cautioned that uses for computers with quantum capabilities remain years away. Well, I mean, this is a man who invested something like $3 billion per quarter for 2 years in VR. So I'm not sure. I'm going to take what Mark Zuckerberg says with a pinch of salt. Right. So 2 pinches of salt. Thank you. Absolutely. Let's correct. So I think we do need a little bit of a kind of reset and a reality check about quantum and the business opportunity. And I'm going to go ladies first with Daniela. Daniela, you're working on quantum as a service and very much looking at the startups in the space, supporting you're very ecosystem oriented, and you've been doing a lot of ecosystem work, which I think is fantastic because it's brilliant that people will actually get involved in that rather than just concentrating on their own companies. They're interested in the success of others. Do you want to kick us off on this discussion about business and quantum?
Yes, so with quantum as a service, making it available to everyone, at the end, we still logically need to kind of translate how people can use it. That's no question. Education is an important component that comes in, is part of the ecosystem that you referred to, as much as the accessibility. We have an emulation that is a size of 1 million qubits that you can compute with, and that helps like examples, be it in the space of nature, in the space of climate protection. You can do climate prediction models. We are working, for example, with Dynex Moonshots on 8 investments in the space for nature, society, health, and welcome. And we are currently helping such pioneering companies to implement their quantum strategies and alleviate their technologies. So for the business in general, to the question, I do think, with a certain responsibility, we should get this available to everyone, get enough education in the ecosystem, make it easy, accessible, even create LLMs maybe on quantum that help people kind of get inspired and make it as mainstream as possible, because it's the next mega cycle in computing and it's for everyone.
Right. So obviously there's startups appearing in the space. Steve, you're probably quite aware of that as well.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff. Everybody's getting into this space. And I think looking at how you commercialize it is going to be important, because if we can't make money on it, nobody's going to pay attention. If you can't get money, you can't develop and keep bringing people into this space. And every day, like Will mentioned earlier, your error correction, things are getting better. And as things get better, more opportunity comes. It takes me back to the days of the internet. If you think about Amazon and what he started with in the internet and working through that, he was building his business, but the internet wasn't really there, right? And he didn't build the internet, he's leveraging the internet. And same thing with quantum. There's a quantum industry, there's quantum computing coming. There's going to be a lot of really creative ideas, creative companies that are going to develop out of this. And so the next Google, the next Amazon, the next all these companies are going to come out. We don't know the names, or maybe we know some of the names. And that's kind of why I'm excited on commercializing and talking with these guys on the panel.
Will, if I can turn to you, obviously I understand that you're launching an educational course with That's Steve. Right. And so what made you guys come up with that? Did you feel that there wasn't enough knowledge about both the sort of the technologies and the sort of business opportunities?
Yeah, so back in 2018, we started the MIT X-Pro quantum courses because we knew that we're going to have to train people who are already in industry who want to pivot to quantum. So we can't give them a 6-year PhD course in quantum. We have to give them a 4-week or a 16-week course in quantum. So we developed these 4 courses, myself, Ike Chuang, Peter Shore, and Aram Harrow from MIT. 4 weeks each. They got some videos, text units, and anyway, so the point is that these focus on the fundamentals and the practical realities of quantum. And this was to, again, pivot people who are not quantum physicists, become quantum aware and able to contribute. Because if we're going to make an industry, we need a workforce. So then Steve took the course, liked it, presumably, and then said, hey, executives don't have 4 weeks. Executives have maybe 4 hours if we're lucky. So then we thought, well, why don't we make a 5th course, which focuses on executives. So it boils it down even further. And that was the progeny of these courses.
Right, I see. Now, we have 2 examples of companies operating in this space. Perhaps if you would like to go first off with Curanium and tell us about what you're doing.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kapil, CEO and co-founder of Curanium. We sit on the other side of the table when it comes to quantum development, and which is about the security, securing the infrastructure from the threats of the strengths of quantum computer. Firm believer in the development of the quantum computing as well as the applications of it. So we are building a layer 1 blockchain using post-quantum cryptography. And the focus is to secure the decentralized world, the crypto assets, as well as the money that goes on the decentralized infrastructures. So that's our prime focus. And in terms of taking it further, of why it becomes relevant, Professor, you spoke about the quantum course that you have built with Peter Shaw. So, and of course, Shaw's algorithm is the one which gave birth to all of it, and which gave birth, of course, to the existence of uranium as well. So Shaw's algorithm, if run on a quantum computer, can break the encryption that exists today and that secures all the blockchains. And that's why the need of post-quantum cryptography and using new algorithms to build any future infrastructures, so that parallelly, as and when the developments of quantum computer progresses, the applications using quantum computers progresses, you also have the infrastructures which is secure against the same computing strength. And that's actually the future, right? The developments of technology has to happen parallelly on both sides. So yeah, my fellow panelists, they are building quantum computers, the courses, and the applications using it. I'm on the other side who's building the post-quantum security layer to prevent from what you build.
Right, I'd love to hear a little bit more about that in a moment. But Robert, if you want to tell us more about what you're doing.
Hi everyone.
Qubit Pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, as the name says, we are developing drugs using computational platform. That platform is accelerated by high-performance computing, so we are big users of GPUs. And we also explore how quantum computer can help us in improving the design of novel drugs that aim at complex targets in the field of cancer and chronic immune disease. Few learnings on the way. First, I like what you said, Steve, just before, in the panel before, it's a marathon. So you are not going, if you hope to get quick results, it's not going to be the case. It will take time. Both the hardware is maturing, as well as the software, the algorithms. We are discovering new algorithms every day. But it's very impressive to see how fast the industry evolves. Second one, people often see quantum as a standalone resources to compute. We think that it will be hybrid. So as when you buy the most expensive hardware at NVIDIA, it's called the DGX, you have 8 GPUs with a few hundred CPUs around. And we think that's the way also quantum will reach the market. You will have some part of your algorithms, some part of very hard computation that will be run on the QPU, but most of the computation will continue to run on GPUs because they are fast, available at scale, etc., etc. So we think about how can we leverage both computing, and we have made a few examples on how we improve the design of drugs, how we do quantum chemistry computation. We recently published a paper also on Monte Carlo optimization, so new theory on how we can have exponential acceleration with Monte Carlo. So although our end products are drugs that we out-license to pharma, to do so and to best leverage quantum, we need to have multidisciplinary team that go from very fundamental mathematics. We have physicists that understand the hardware and application people that know what are the problems we need to solve with quantum computers.
Amazing. Right, well, when we talk about business, especially in the technology world, we usually talk about three fundamental things. We need the technology, of course. We need talent. So we need to know where the talent has come from, where and how we're going to develop it, who are the leadership in that talent base, the engineering capabilities, the design, the whole marketing, the whole works. And we need money. We need investments. And actually, I should have added a fourth. We need exits eventually. So which one should we start with? I think we've delved deeply into the technology in our first panel, but we can do a little bit on that. There's clearly technology opportunity, but let's combine it with technology and the investment side. So I think maybe let's go with Daniela and Steve. If you want to talk a little bit about where's the money going to come from investment? Is it venture capital? Is it private equity? Is it family offices? Is it strategic investments by big companies?
Mike, the answer is yes. Right now, you can see a lot of governments coming in. I think somebody brought in kind of governments, and there's the public. Alexandra, earlier, she mentioned the whole public versus private investment. And so you're getting a lot of governments that are very interested in the technology. They see the opportunity, but they also see the threats. And so they're investing in this and driving
it. And they're obviously motivated by potential for cryptography to be broken.
Absolutely.
And defense capabilities and God knows what else.
Yeah.
Well, let me also say that it's
Yeah.
not just doom and gloom. I
Yes.
think governments can also see the economic opportunity in the future, right? So, of course, there's a strong national security aspect to this, which is very important, and governments need to keep track of that. But they also see the potential for economic growth. Look, we don't know yet, but quantum could be as important to the 21st century as classical computing was to the 20th and continues to be. So, sorry to interrupt, Steve.
No, that's good. And you know what? The good thing,
Thanks.
the reason I asked Will, because I think I asked Will about 8 months ago, you need to come to Davos with me. And because Will is the guy that keeps me kind of, I'm the guy that wants to keep, but Will's good. So we want to be trusted partners, and you're absolutely right. We're not here to scare people. So, but you do need to look both on the opportunity and the threat side. That motivates people to invest. And so I use their motivation to invest. So the people that are looking at the threat and the security side, we look at it and there are ways to protect. On the opportunity side, I know you brought up earlier about banking and optimization. So Alexandra mentioned simulation and optimization. In the optimization, who in this room doesn't have an opportunity to optimize something? Well, guess what? Quantum computing has the opportunity to help you. And back to your point, Robert, is you're going to do it in combination. And most of it will be on classical computers. And then you're just going to send those specific use cases to them. So within banking, it's around collateral optimization, pricing optimization, and then working on Monte Carlo analysis, so for value at risk.
Daniela, so investors.
Yeah, so from an investment perspective, so for me at least, quantum is here, right? That's clear. I mean, we're in the market. We are engaging in healthcare right now. We are helping with ocean health projects, by the way, as well, etc. So really wanting to make it happen. Investors, we are talking to investors to also co-invest. We did 8 investments in our portfolio right now with Dynix Moonshots, and we are also partnering with VCs now that will very quickly take existing technology companies and make them quantum ready so that they can actually leverage out of their situation into the next gen. That can be AI enhancement, that can be kind of, we're working, for example, on a supply chain optimization tool in combination with weather predictions, and these are all possibilities where you can suddenly play with the field, right? And that's for the investments. I think it's going to come strongly from the private sector. The governmental sector I appreciate, but they're often slow, and then they have a lot of discussions and conversations. I think it's really coming a little bit out of the rebel corner.
Can you talk any hard numbers about those investments? I mean, what sort of things are we talking about? Are we talking early stage, sort of pre-seed, seed, Series A? What kind of numbers are we talking about?
You mean with which kind of category of investment?
Categories,
level?
and I mean, throw out some ideas. I mean, typically on TechCrunch, we'll sort of sniff at a seed or 5 million, or
yeah.
get a bit more
So the
interested.
interesting aspect we are seeing. Okay, yeah. You need to ask me in a year's time because I will have more experience to confirm what I'm saying. But what we are seeing is that a lot of companies that have actually worked years already on their things, right? We have one now, as said, in supply chain optimization, where it's actually not an early stage. It's like a late stage series.
Pre-seed.
It's a late stage seed stage prior to Series A kind of
Okay,
thing.
late seed then.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's where I see a lot of opportunity.
I mean, I can give a concrete example. I co-founded with some students Atlantic Quantum about 3 years ago. The seed round was $11 million. We got $10 million in non-dilutive government funding. Both sides are important. Private capital as well as public. We're starting our A round now, and we're targeting a raise of about $50 million.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an A, or?
That's an A round. And
yeah.
It may sound a little high for an A round. We're actually trying to keep it as low as possible. But quantum is hardware, and hardware is hard, and it has capital expenditures which are high, and that's why that number is 50,
Yes.
not say 10
So for
or
the
20.
investors in the room, there's an opportunity.
Right. What about Curanium? What's been your fundraising journey, and where do you think the investors are in this space?
So for us, it has been a little opposite, right? So we started in January last year, and what we are trying to build, like we said, is a quantum secure infrastructure, right? So the first question when we sit in a room with an investor would be, is quantum even here? Why should we invest in a quantum secure infrastructure? So that's how the conversation started initially. So we have seen that entire journey now coming around, and by end of last year, there have been a heavy push towards, oh, quantum is already here and now we want to talk to you. Because we have been building for a year, our technology is ready, we are launching our mainnet in next 2 weeks. So the kind of investment journey that we saw, we raised a seed round early last year, which came from HNIs, and because they are like these individuals who have seen the journey, who believe in the future, they take the bet. And now we are raising our Series A, which is going to be a substantial round. We are discussing with family offices and VCs. We have our friends Reto and Barbara in the room who are helping us put together some tier 1 investors next week in Geneva. So the conversations have really matured over the last 365 days. And I really find it optimistic. Of course, the journey initially has been a lot of hustle, and that's what the entrepreneur life is. But it allows you the opportunity to also see where the curve bends and what actually matters. So the people on this panel, they have seen the journey towards building a quantum computer and its application since years now. Right. So when we discuss with them that, okay, what we are building can also have a threat to the current encryption, they immediately get it. But that has been a concentrated section of academics and industry leaders in one part of the world. In the last 2 or 3 months, I'm seeing it going really global. So for Curanium as well, we are now present in more than 12 countries with our legal presence in more than 3 countries. So it's going fairly well. And the ecosystem is now really taking a much aggressive turn.
And have you gone public yet on what stage you're at, how much you've raised, who from?
So we have not gone public with it yet. And that is because of my personal philosophy that I don't like to celebrate fundraise. I see it as a big PR that, okay, we raised so much. I think what should be celebrated is milestones of what is done with that money. So we have raised fairly well. We are doing good. We are a 120 people company. And now we are raising a much larger amount. We are going to double up in strength this year, and we are going global with our roadshows. But what we celebrate in the media is what we have delivered with that money. So our technology is ready. We are building a huge brand around creating uncrackability. That's what we focus on. And I think
cool.
That's what I
and
like to
Cubic
celebrate.
Pharmaceuticals, tell us about your journey so far in terms of the investment side.
We've been funded in 2021. So started with a pre-seed round. We raised our seed round in 2022 in the summer. It was 16 million euros. Then we leveraged the European non-dilutive funding ecosystem. As we invest a lot into quantum, it was about the same amount, a bit more. And now we are raising the Series A, similar. We all know that will be the ballpark. We don't build hardware, but we discover drugs, and you need to invest into wet lab facilities, not internally, but externally, so that's why the numbers are similar.
Certainly sort of pharma space, biotech you start to get into big numbers, bigger numbers. Certainly they're bigger than enterprise SaaS or whatever. We all need another accounting package, don't we? That's really interesting. So the investment angle, then we've got, and then I think the interesting thing is you mentioned governments earlier, is like the strategic aspect to this. So pharmaceuticals, you've got weather prediction, supply chains. There's really a big opportunity here for strategic investors, isn't there? There must be all sorts of interesting things going on at that level.
Maybe some personal story, personal at the larger space. During COVID, France has a long history of pharmaceutical research, discovered quite a lot of drugs, and we were the only country.
Pasteurization, I think, was useful.
Depend how you prefer your cheese, but no drug came from the French research, nor from the French pharmas for COVID. And I think that was a major issue because, we have a lot of capabilities, we have a lot of strength. Now we see that we can't even afford to continue producing the drugs in France, and it's a large issue at the European level. Quantum will have a major impact on discovering and generating novel IP for drug discovery. So if we leave it to other regions of the world to gain that competitive edge, then we know that for sure we will completely depend. And healthcare access to food, access to energy. These are the key elements for a European perspective that a government needs to keep, of course, with defense.
Yeah, and you mentioned the supply chain aspect to this, and quantum, obviously, optimization and digital twinning aspect to be able to weather prediction. I mean, and of course with climate change. I mean, I call it the climate crisis, but I'm not sure if I'm out of fashion now. Or certainly global weirding, I think we gradually settled on at some point. The prediction aspect of this is huge, isn't it? I mean, I read a story the other day about a company that was trying to basically create much more sort of resilient supply chains based on organic farming. Because the traditional farming methods with tons of chemicals and stuff was actually basically starting to fail, and the crops were just not coming out of the ground. So there were a lot of people going back to organic farming in order to be able to produce resilient, climate change resilient farming. So, and that's based on weather, obviously. So there must be huge opportunities here.
No, the opportunities are gigantic, and especially from an investment perspective. I mean, I'm a bit of polymath and come from the investment space anyways, and I can just say on the late seed swap Series A level, you have very interesting opportunities now because they've done already a lot of work and you can tap into it with quantum, right? If you take, for example, supply chain optimization with regards to switching quickly into other supply chains, if possible, if the weather isn't playing right for certain, kind of companies. I mean, the computation of that is super complex, but it is at the end possible now because we have the possibilities with the emulation to solve real world problems at scale. So that's what we're doing. You have that also, we're building an Earth monitor, which will be the monitor for regeneration, which is with Mark Buckley. And we're doing that with the Alois Foundation to help them actually create a monitor to tap into the billions of dollars that are deployed to regeneration, but only if you prove regeneration. So you have to somehow simulate what you can do with it, and we're in the process of doing that. So these are real world.
Will?
Yeah, sure. There's a lot of hope for quantum computing and algorithms, and what are we going to be able to do with this? And the honest answer is we don't exactly know everything that's going to be possible. What we do know is simulation, that's solid. When we can build a large quantum computer, we will be able to simulate things such as pharmaceutical drugs, et cetera. Optimization, I think there's a play there, and many of the other applications too. But there is this, of course, national security aspect, but I think the economic security of the future is far more important. What is going to be the tax base of your country in 50 or 75 years? We talked about it in the previous session, if I can bring it up again. Jensen's pronouncement of 15 to 20 or 25 years, or Mark Zuckerberg saying, hey, it's still years off. I don't take that as a negative. I really take it as a positive, because 10 years ago, these guys would be saying, yeah, quantum computer's never going to happen. And now it's 15 to 25 years away. I think that that's actually good. I think it's actually quite accurate. These guys are technologists. They know. I agree with him. The fact is, you go back to the 1950s and you ask people, what are we going to do with classical computers? Even Watson at IBM was saying, yeah, I can only foresee really a business for maybe 10 or 15 of these. Totally wrong, right? But it didn't happen in 5 years. I often ask people, when did we have the first first classical computer, right? I don't know the answer, right? Because it evolved over time. And the same thing's going to happen with quantum. But the people who are making classical computers today and making a lot of money off it, they didn't start doing that 3 years ago. They've been in it for decades, right? The opportunity's there. Which one of us doesn't wish we had invested in a classical computer in the 1950s? Just think about how much money you would have made.
Yes, I know. It's like people bought Apple stock in the 80s and 90s, right? Go ahead, yeah.
Going back to NVIDIA, 10 years ago, I think the company was worth about 10 billion. So it took indeed these 10 years to go to a trillion, because they found a use case that goes almost everywhere. And I think that's how we should take that sentence. We will find a use case where there will be quantum everywhere in about 10 years of time.
There's a pretty immediate business case, isn't there, in being able to project things like crypto, basically, isn't there? So, I don't think we'd all want our Bitcoin hacked immediately, would we? So, tell us about that.
So, the way we look at it is, Mike, what is a quantum computer? Very simply put, it is massive computational strength. And what can we do with that massive computational strength is what we are discussing about here. The possibilities of that are yet being defined. We have identified some use cases of what we can do with that massive computational strength, whether it is in the healthcare space, automotive space, financial services sector. That is going to keep redefining itself. But one thing which is established is that this massive computational strength that is going to become a threat for the current encryptions. Why? Because all the current encryptions are a complex calculation that the current computers are not designed to solve. They don't have enough computation strength to do. Our entire digital economy is based on these encryptions. Whether it is the blockchain industry or the non-blockchain and traditional industry, they are secured by these encryptions, which are nothing but a super complex calculation that our classical computers don't have enough strength to solve. When quantum computers come into picture, and I always say it's not just about quantum computers. Quantum computers are the peak of it. Even today with NVIDIA, we're talking about NVIDIA a lot. What do they produce? GPUs. What do GPUs do? In AI, for processing massive amount of data, why are GPUs used? Because they help in processing massive data, which is solving massive calculation problems. Again, very simplifying it, right? So even with the advancements in the computation strengths today, with GPUs today and with quantum computers tomorrow, the existing encryptions are becoming weaker and weaker every day. And that is of massive importance because everything we do digitally, everything is based on that. Right? So that is the biggest and the first and the foremost application I see in the quantum age. And even while if somebody say we are preparing for the quantum age, to secure our digital infrastructure. Because only then anything else we do is going to be secure. It's like you're building a big palace, but the foundation is super weak. So what are we going to do with that palace? Someday it's going to fall down, right?
Yeah, well, we will have to think about these basics, don't we? Now, we're going to have some time for Q&A very shortly, so please make some mental notes about any thoughts you would like to raise, points or questions. We'll have a few minutes for that. But just to sort of, we talked a bit about the investment and how much is going into the space, into sort of various companies, the kinds of, obviously the considerations that some of the companies are going to require significant funding, especially given that hardware is involved. And in fact, and we also talked about how some quantum computing stocks, had some ructions. Associated stocks had some ructions with various sort of public statements by various CEOs recently. So there's clearly a sort of stock market aspect to this. Are we going to see? Is it too early to talk about things like M&A or rolling up companies or I mean, how early? Where are we in the kind of cycle? Are we going up towards the hype cycle, or are we going down, or are we going into a space where people are going to go, you know what, you're doing the similar thing to me. Let's let's roll up together and join forces. What's going on? I'd like to hear from Daniela first, if I could first. Yeah.
Well, so first of all, I think NVIDIA will not be the only one. I mean, we do have also huge pressure coming from Asia. And the countries that are being informed or that are being kind of approached are also towards Africa, India, etc., where these companies will flourish. There are huge partnerships currently already being built in bringing other countries so other countries into the same position, right? So there's a lot happening. It's, we have this kind of thing, political stuff that is, in my view, big question mark why this is necessary. But at the end of the day, I do think we will have more competitors coming into the space, and they will very quickly attach to it whoever is at the forefront. So you will be, if you're in quantum and you're doing this, what you're doing, for example, they will approach very quickly because they need to be faster, they need to be more dynamic logically to create the position they have to be in. So we're having now a lot of moving parts. And I do also think from the hardware perspective, there will be hybrids coming up, hybrid interest coming. So I think there will be a lot of movement in the next 24 months, actually.
Right. Robert, you had a point?
And it started already. We saw already some consolidation, especially hardware companies buying some small software company for applications. Because if you only propose an hardware, I mean, it's very hard for clients to use them. So, and also hardware companies buying network companies, quantum networks, such as IonQ, who did an acquisition So it's starting, and I think it will only accelerate.
Yeah,
Will.
I could add to this. Our first startup, which was called Labber, was acquired in 2019 by Keysight. Our current startup, as I mentioned, we're raising an A. But the issue is that it's so expensive, right? And we're competing against, let's say, the Googles and the Amazons and the IBMs with very, very deep pockets. And so, yeah, it's possible for a startup company to really, change the discussion and go for it. And we hope that some of them succeed. But I would say the majority of these companies will attack a specific problem, one that these large companies either don't have time or the bandwidth to address. You solve a key problem, and they're going to acquire you. I think that's going to be the norm going forward.
That raises an interesting question. You mentioned Google, etc. Steve, do you think that investors should be buying, investing in Series A of quantum companies, or just buying Google stock?
I guess it depends on your risk appetite. I think you should be mixing between both and understanding the landscape. I personally actually am doing both, both an investor there and then looking at the players I mentioned earlier who I think is winning. But not only on the hardware side, on the software side, on the integration side. I think the nearest term application in this whole area is the security part. I agree. And I think with governments putting out executive orders, like the White House put out an executive order, that if you want to sell to the White House, you have to be PQC compliant by a certain time. And if you want to sell to somebody who sells to the White House, you have to be compliant. And so I think these are the areas that right now, if I'm looking for right now investments, it's really in the PQC area. And how are you going to protect people in looking on the security side? That's what's got people interested right now, and that's the side. So I think what you're working on is fantastic. We were looking at it, and a lot of people, when I'm on panels, talk to me to say, hey, Steve, what does this mean to my blockchain? And I told them, I'm less worried about your blockchain and more worried about your wallet holding the money.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I like the be uncrackable thing. That's quite a clever idea. Daniela, briefly?
Yeah, very briefly. I do think I'm very motivated, and I think today's centralistic, gigantic companies will not exist in that format anymore in the next 5 years. I think we're going to have other people come up to it, and kind of also from other countries. I think there will be a little bit of swap, and that the industry has seen that always. So I wouldn't go straight forward into what are the normal lists that you could think are staying like in the centralistic function, because I do think there will be a lot of change.
Right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do some Q&A, but let's have a little round of applause for our panel first of all. We have a microphone. If you have any questions or points you'd like to raise, sir, go ahead. Go ahead.
Jeremy McCain, Ocean AI. On the quantum as a service, I'm really curious. I mean, obviously my head is always in climate change and oceans, but we've developed some quantum applications as well, and it's very difficult when you're talking about scaling up accurate models that can simulate nature-based solutions. And so, being the fact that you mentioned that you're working with Mark and some of those observation things, I would like to hear more about the specific challenges that you're coming across that we still need to address.
The challenges are just bringing the team together and making it really in such kind of initiatives really flourish. But we're also working on ocean health with regards to thinking around simulations, real-time simulations of coral reef growing. Of also flood walls, building natural flood walls and computing actually the different layers of when is seagrass relevant, when is stones relevant, etc. These are very complex computations, but with what we have as a quantum as a service right now, with that together with our Dynex moonshots, we make these initiatives happen from our side. Our quantum architects engage literally and try to translate what the people have as technology, and we teach constantly the people in a 30-day program online how to convert and make them quantum ready. So that's how we do it. So the challenge is more getting everybody up to speed, but the computation is there.
Great. We have another question up the front here.
Hello, Juan from Danish Technological Institute. A pleasure to be here, and thanks for a lot of insights. DTI is an RTO, Research Technology Organizations. There are 350 of them. I'm in the board of that. We crack problems for companies for example, becoming more sustainable or the next material or sourcing things that you don't have access to. There's a complexity of making problems meet the right solvers. Quantum, to roll out its full potential, has to somehow make these complex and very costly resources meet the problems. 95% of the ecosystem of companies in Europe is below 5 employees. They don't have IT departments. So we have some kind of distributed pilots who crunch and say, this is going to be standard computing, this is going to be GPUs with AI, this is going to be maybe quantum, this is going to be... So there is some kind of distributed topology of solving and harnessing problems. It looks a little bit like electricity and water in the past, you know. So do you have any thoughts on how to get there? Because times are of rising uncertainty, trust is an issue, how to get problems to the right solvers as fast as possible, and access to resources which also risk to make a divide.
So I think the question is what, solving problems or?
I think it's the match of matching the problem with the solvers, 100%. And I think it's very simple. In Europe, it will not happen totally because we're aging. And you have to really get up to speed countries with a lot of young people. And you have to educate them. So matching the problem is with educational system, like also Steve is promoting for the MIT. That is what we need to make them match the problem. And the more people have the knowledge, the better it becomes.
Yeah, I think with an emerging technology, a lot of people like to lead with the technology. And the reality is what we need to do is look at your strategy and say, what can quantum do for your strategy instead of the other way around? Because doing it the other way around doesn't really work. And right now, there's not many, but there are some things that quantum can help, is focusing on that, being disciplined, and that's where you can have impact.
And there's a question at the back.
I have a question for Kapil. Kapil, do you think that you are a little bit ahead of the game with the quantum computers taking 10 years to catch up with you?
I wouldn't say ahead of the game, but I would say right on time, if I may. Because I always say that you don't hire a security guard after a theft has happened. You hire a security guard before a theft or to protect any theft from happening, right? So the moment we start seeing the progress towards the quantum age, that is exactly the time, ideally, that the security protocols around it should be starting to get built. So I think that's what we are trying to do. And we are glad that we are getting the right amount of support, and the ecosystem is now moving in that direction as well.
If I could just add one thing to that. Another aspect to this is forward security. So there's a lot of information that we all are securing right now that's being vacuumed up, stored on hard drives. We can't read it right now. But in 10 or 15 or 20 years, when we do have a quantum computer, we'll be able to break it. And so it's a risk-benefit analysis for all of us. Do we think we'll have a quantum computer in 5 years? I don't think so. Not at a Shor-capable scale. 10 years? Maybe if we're lucky. Jensen now, 15, 20 years? Yeah, it's starting to look more likely. And we need to be changing over to these new post-quantum crypto schemes right now because we all have information that we want to retain security over 20, even 50 years in the future.
Yeah, 20 years is not really that long, is it?
No,
if you think about it. We had an... Oh. Good suggestion.
Sounds great.
The theme is the business opportunity, and they're all going to be doing business with each other any minute now. We have another question there. Yeah.
Hi, Steve. The question about your quantum index, is it investable index? Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
No, the index is not investable right now, but we just kicked it off. So we're looking on sponsorship, investment, and other things. Right now, what we want to do is show how well the industry is doing. So if you're in the industry and you're doing well in quantum, you're using patents, your team size, your investments, all of that, we're trying to be fair and subjective objective to all the companies, and we want to show the industry what they're doing. Now you get to see how well your competitors are doing. When I was at a big bank, you guys heard what bank I was. Anytime somebody mentioned another bank, so a Citibank or a other bank was doing, then they were like, oh, well, if Citibank's doing, we got to do it. So part of it is, what are your competitors doing? And we're giving them insight into that.
And that's it's sort of kind of like a media play slightly, because someone could put a sponsorship
Absolutely.
on it. Or,
Yeah.
Do you think you'll develop it into like a database, like Crunchbase or something?
We already have the kind of, if you want deeper insights, we're only giving you the high. If you want deeper insights, absolutely, that's the intention. And remember, I'm a consulting company, so if you want to move up the ranking and you want help doing that, that's what I do for a living.
There you go. Bit of an advert. Now, any other opportunities for final questions?
Do you mind if I add one more thing to
Go for
the
it.
previous one, and then, yeah, we'll do that question. Another aspect to this post-quantum crypto that is important is it's not just software. Software is easy to change, right? And then we could just switch tomorrow into this new post-quantum crypto scheme. The problem is there's a lot of hardware that's embedded into these systems, in particular for defense systems, where you didn't want to trust the software. So it's hardware now. Now we have to change all of that hardware in a way that's retroactive to things that are compatible, say, years ago. That's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of money. And that's also why we need to start right now, because it may take us 10 years to switch over to post-quantum crypto. The software is easy. The hardware is hard.
I think we're going to have 2 short questions left, I think. There was one there. Thank you.
Hey, it's Wade from Curanium. It's a great panel, right? We heard a lot about the private sector. I just want to take some thoughts and comments from the panel on public sector or government initiatives, right? What can they potentially explore to really help drive adoption in the quantum space?
Short answers. Will, have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, sure. Just full disclosure, I work on the National Quantum Initiative Advisory Committee. I just got a new boss yesterday. And the point, I think, for governments really is to support the entire ecosystem. And that includes academia, national labs, and don't forget industry. That's also very important. Finding ways to make these groups interact and work together is always a challenge, but if there's anyone who can make it happen, I think that governments can facilitate it. That's a very important role. It will help us when these quantum winters come, and surely they shall. But if it's a winter in Hawaii, we don't mind so much. So let's hope that the government smooth things out for us.
I don't think there's certainly, let's say, developed country government that isn't looking at quantum right now. And I'm not going to get into the race between European quantum companies and US ones. A whole different ballgame. We have one final one here, I think.
Thank you. If you were on the board of a retail bank, what would you recommend to do around quantum?
Number one, have a strategy. So ignoring it, so educate your board. So focus on your board, educate them, let them know what's going on. Work with the C-level to build a strategy and understand where you're going to build, both on the defense side and then on the opportunity side, and then start giving your team muscle memory to start working on those algorithms to help do that on the optimization. But you don't have to start expensive. You can start small, educate, and then start getting that muscle memory on the team.
Well, one thing I've been very excited to hear out of the couple of panels I've been running today about quantum, unlike when I run a panel about artificial intelligence, is that journalists still have a job, which is great for me. I'm not about to be replaced by quantum computing anytime yet. But ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fascinating morning talking about quantum. We've had brilliant panels, fantastic, talented and expert panelists. So please, Steve Suarez from Horizon X, Will Oliver from MIT, Daniela Herman from Dynex, Kapil Diman from Curanium, and Robert Marino from Qubit Pharmaceuticals. And from me, Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, thank you very much, and a round of applause for our panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike the Butcher.